Hi, I'm Ash and welcome to this new video where we will be taking a look at the Duotone Unit SLS. This video I know has been in demand and unfortunately my real job has got solidly in the way of editing the video whilst I've had the footage for several weeks now. I don't work in the water sports industry and I run my own software business, so when things turn busy, unfortunately the YouTube channel has to take a bit of a back seat. Anyway, here we are and let's have a look at the new unit wing. Firstly, I've only been able to review the SLS version. The Water Sports Centre got an SLS 4m in for demo and I personally bought a 5m SLS after riding it. I'm afraid I've not been able to try the Dacron cheaper version of the wing. That really puts an end to the discussion as to what my next wing would be. I'll talk to this a bit towards the end of the video as quite a few things have changed in my riding over the last couple of months, which have led to quite a few changes in my wing quiver. The wing itself has not changed dramatically, and rather than go over the entire wing, I'm just going to talk to the changes to last year's wing and spend a bit more time on the performance of the wing in this review. In terms of the boom or handles that you connect to the strut, they are exactly the same as last year. They're very ergonomic, which is great if you're using the handles, not quite so ergonomic if you're using a boom as you've just got a straight handle to hold on to for the length of the strut. But otherwise it's very comfortable, good size, fits the hand quite nicely, has that nice pistol grip at the front. The leading edge flag handle has changed and we now have the flag handle first seen on the float. This is bigger, much stiffer and a really worthwhile upgrade. Wing control using this handle is better, you have more room for your hand and it's generally more comfortable in use. We have the usual SLS Penta TX construction for the leading edge and the strut, and we also have that small Alula section at the front, the same as last year's SLS wing. And we have the same Mod 3S canopy material for the main canopy. The main change here is the canopy tension. It's looser than the previous year in the midsection of the canopy, so we have some tightness in the canopy at the front to maintain the wing profile to the wind, and then a looser midsection leading into the trailing edge. The wing is flatter than last year with much less dihedral, which is more like the float. In terms of weight and wingspan, again very similar to the previous year's wing. Looking at the changes overall and the slight change in the sweep of the wing, I would say that what Duotone have gone for here is a better tacking wing and a more manoeuvrable wing, so we'll see if that plays out on the water. As usual with Duotone wings, there's no wing leash provided, but as I previously mentioned, the Duotone wing leash is awful anyway, so probably a good thing. Be sure to buy a better aftermarket leash from your favourite supplier. I tend to use the Ozone Bungee waist leash these days as my preferred leash. As with all Duotone wings, it has the same valves as previous wings and the one pump system with a pinch clip between the strut and the leading edge. Again, the wing does not come with an adapter for the valve, so you have to buy that separately, and I moan about that on every Duotone wing in every review and it never changes. Okay, so that's everything I'm going to cover just looking at the wing and its design and construction. It does have all the usual stuff that a Duotone wing has, the load spreader on the rear of the strut and at the wingtips, the small protections for the leading edge, all the usual stuff, windows, all that stuff is all as per previous wings. Our reviews always follow the same format. I'll put the data on the screen and we'll just work through it a category at a time, starting with, as usual, pump onto foil. It has to be said that for me the pump onto foil is extremely close to last year's wing. If I had to be pushed on whether it is better or worse, I would probably say it's very marginally worse than last year's wing. The canopy is a little bit looser and the low end just feels slightly less than last year, which was very grunty in the low end. This is really splitting hairs, they are very close to each other in reality, and as such we can call the low end good in comparison to the market as a whole, and this has been a continuous theme with the unit wings throughout their various iterations. The issues on units usually come at the high end, so we'll see if that has changed in this version of the wing. In terms of pump technique, it's the same as last year. No special technique is required, and you can just get hold of it and wring its neck and the wing will generate power. It orientates itself well in very light winds and doesn't leave you hunting to try to find the sweet spot to start your pump, unlike some other manufacturers' wings. Once up on foil, the wing feels balanced and will fly a little better one-handed than last year's wing in light to moderate winds. The balance between the hands is neutral and it's neither front or backhand loaded. As we move into overpowered conditions, then some different characteristics appear. This wing is a bit fidgety in overpowered conditions. It's not a rock solid, sit still, just create power as the wind increases style of wing. For example, the Mode Pro from North, which excels in overpowered conditions. The SLS unit, it gets a bit fidgety, it moves around a bit. It's all very controllable, but it clearly isn't a locked in wing in overpowered conditions. If I'm honest, I would prefer it as a little bit more stable when very powered, but it never enters into that area that the 2023 unit had where it become unmanageable when very overpowered. It stays very well within control, it just fidgets and moves around a little bit in the gusts. The high end is definitely there, requires a little bit more management of the wing than something like the North Mode Pro or Ozone Flux V2, which are just a bit more stable when overpowered. All that said, it's definitely a faster wing than it was last year, and this is due to the smaller leading edge. It's thinner and definitely penetrates the wind better than last year's model, and that also translates into the upwind drive of the wing, which is also better than last year's model. If we move on now to jibes, we now get into an area where the SLS units particularly thrive. The SLS is of course a lighter construction than the Dacron version, and that lightness does make for a playful wing. Jibes are easy and the wing floats nicely through the jibe. Similarly, for race jibes and Heineken jibes, we have a very compliant and playful wing, and the lightness of the SLS construction really communicates well with the rider to give that confident feel you want in advanced manoeuvres. Now to a crucial area that I personally didn't like in the 2025 unit, which is tacking. I really hoped that with the arrival of the float, the new 2026 unit would move a little away from the wave performance criteria that was put into it and back towards freeride or freestyle, which would include a really confident tack. Here the new SLS wing does not disappoint. It is much more positive and confident going into the tack, requires less commitment from the rider, and is more towards the auto tack that used to be on the earlier slick wings. The wing is happy to do a tack flying overhead or on its side, and it's just down to the rider how hard you commit the wing to the tack as to which version you get. Once through the eye of the wind, the wing opens up nicely and pulls you through. So really a round of applause on this one. This wing tacks really nicely and confidently. There's no backwinding or nervousness when driving hard upwind, which also helps when driving into an aggressive tack. So top marks all around here. Moving on, if we just talk about overall speed, I'd put the unit in a slightly above average category. This is because when you power out the wing, it has that tendency to fidget, which can stop you having the confidence to really lock in and push really hard to convert gust into speed. However, the leading edge of this wing is now smaller than it was in the previous wing. It's much more efficient going upwind, and it's much quicker in a straight line than last year's wing. So it's certainly better, but there is that slight fidgeting which does affect things. Flagging out, we do have a light wing with the SLS version, which bodes well if you're surfing downwind bumps, as the tail of the wing will be much later to drop. We have a flatter wing than last year and an improved flag out. It certainly isn't in the same ballpark as the float, but it is more than acceptable for a freeride wing and better than last year's unit. It also has that way better flag handle, which makes wing control much easier. Sat on the water, handles down, the unit does have a tendency to want to fly up and flip over, much like all previous units have done so. So for beginners, this could possibly be an annoying trait. It can also do this when it's upside down on the water as well, so letting go of the wing to fly on a long leash in strong winds is not really recommended. Next we come to backwinding, and here the performance was actually really good. The slightly looser mid-canopy lends itself well to powering up backwinded with a nice amount of control and stability. So for backwind manoeuvres, it's easier than last year's wing and nice overall in the backwind position. So if you plan to play around learning backwind skills, then this wing does work very well and doesn't require being hugely overpowered to work. Lastly, jumping, and the SLS wings sit between Dacron and Alula in terms of stiffness, so you get bit more from your launch and a slower drift down on the SLS construction than Dacron, but if you want ultimate jump and hang time, then it's difficult to beat Alula. Personally, I'm not overly keen on Alula wings and find them too stiff, but the SLS seems to sit in the sweet spot, which is why I favour the modest increase in price for a better performing and lighter wing. So overall, we have kind of what I was expecting of the 2026 unit, which is a subtle push of the unit back towards freeride and freestyle, and a little bit away from that wave ride focus now that the float exists, which is great because for those of us that value freeride and freestyle performance, we haven't damped it by wave riding characteristics, and we've now got a true freeride type wing. So let's do some pros and cons. The pros are that it's lightweight, it's playful, it's good in all jibes, it tacks really well, it backwinds well, and it's nicely balanced between the hands. The cons are a little bit more difficult. It's a little bit fidgety when overpowered, but not excessively so. But we have got a faster wing and one that handles being overpowered better than last year's wing. And the other con would be that it doesn't behave well on a long leash when resting on the water, but it's really a short list this year in terms of cons. In terms of who this wing is for, well, intermediate riders or experts, those looking for a playful freeride wing that is good in all maneuvers, people looking for a light wing. You could use this wing as a beginner, but I feel its long leash behaviour may not be favoured by some beginners. If you keep it on a short leash, as you should, it's perfectly usable for beginners as it is otherwise easy to use. If you're into jumping, freeride, freestyle, going reasonably fast, or you want a relatively well behaved wing that's lightweight and flags out okay, then it will also suit you. If your focus is purely wave orientated, then the float is the better option for that absolutely rock solid flag out. Coming full circle, I said at the beginning that my wing quiver had changed in the last couple of months, and this change is actually quite a bit more dramatic than even I was expecting. I now have a 2025 SLS Unit 6.5 meter wing, which is the white wing that you've seen in my videos before, and I have a 2026 SLS 5 meter unit wing that I bought after riding the 4 meter that you see in this video. These are my tools of choice for sub 16 to 17 knots weather, basically lighter winds where parrowing makes not much sense. Then from 16 to 17 knots upwards, I have a 4.3, 3.6, 3 and a 2.4 ozone power pack quiver of power wings. This is quite a change, and this is because from 20 knots we get reasonable wind swell that can be ridden on the Crest 1200 or the Crest 1050, and if there is swell, I really don't want an inflatable wing getting in the way, and so from 20 knots all the way up to high 30 knots I'm now using power wings instead. For lighter wind days we get in summer, I'll be on the 2 SLS units that I now own, where I can do foiling tricks and general free riding on inflatable wings, which makes way more sense in light wind conditions where there are no bumps to ride, and I really don't enjoy light wind para winging, and therefore I can have a lot more fun with an inflatable wing in those conditions. In terms of why didn't I buy a Flux V2 or the Reed-in wing, the Supernatural, which were both potential candidates and ones that I liked from my testing. And the answer to that was that the Flux V2 was a bit on the heavy side, and it also felt expensive for a product that is only Dacron built. The Duotone SLS unit is similar money but lighter and higher quality materials, and it performed better. The Flux V2 is a little bit more stable on the top end, but in every other category the Duotone SLS is a better wing. So for the Flux, it was value for money, and the fact that it just didn't really perform as well as the SLS unit. The Reed-in is actually more similar to the SLS unit in both of performance and weight, but my issue with the Reed-in wing is that it has fairly low brand adoption by the general public in the main, and that makes them hard to sell second hand. And they also command less money second hand, as there's less interest than you would get in a second hand Duotone wing. That said, the Reed-in is cheaper to buy up front, so it is actually a very good value for money wing, but I'd rather have the ease of resale when I want to move on my wings after a couple of years. Reed-in just need to keep plugging away, as the product is progressively getting better. It just hasn't broken through to mainstream in my opinion yet, and that makes it difficult to move on when you've finished with it. Okay, so that's it for this video. Sorry for the delay in getting this review out. Do give the Water Sports Centre a click, as they continue to provide me demos such that I can bring you these reviews, and I thank them for their continued support in making these videos possible. If you want to demo the 4-meter wing in the video, it's still in their demo fleet, and I'm sure they would be very happy to lend it to you if you wanted to try it.